Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I'll tell you what, I have long known that there is one skill that is both incredibly difficult to master, but also incredibly valuable for all of us in our own business, and that is putting butts in seats. And that's why we have found someone who is absolutely incredible in the world of events marketing, someone who has that very rare ability. You're going to hear about all the cool ways that she puts it to work to help other businesses grow as well. So let me tell you all about today's guest. Her name is Ginny Van Doren-Truong. She is a seasoned marketing professional with over 15 years of experience in the live entertainment industry, covering both venue and promoter perspectives. She has been instrumental in promoting more than, you ready for this? 800 shows. Yes, more than 800 shows across venues ranging from 1,800 to 15,000 seats. Most recently, she served as the director of marketing at the Wagner Noel Performing Arts Center, leading marketing efforts for hundreds of events each year. Now, what I love about her entrepreneurial story is she realizes how valuable all of these gifts and skills that she has are, and so that's why in 2023, after a decade with ASM Global, Ginny founded her own full-service marketing agency called Backstage Event Marketing. Since launching the agency, she has secured a 3-year contract with the Ector County Coliseum and a 2-year contract with Odessa Arts, where she heads up a very cool community event. I've seen pictures and videos from it. It looks like the entire community loves the work that Ginny helps to produce, as she heads up First Friday ODTX and oversees the production of their quarterly magazine Beacon West. Additionally, Ginny has helped market over 20 shows in Midland, Odessa, and the Houston area over the past 16 months. Her experience includes building a robust contractor network and developing practical tools to streamline event marketing and boost ticket sales. And what I really love about Ginny's work is she understands how important it is to all of us as business owners, as entrepreneurs, as people inside of our communities. So we're all going to learn a lot from her today. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Ginny Van Doren-Truong. All right, Ginny, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
Heck yes, there's so much good stuff that we're getting into. You heard me say it at the top of the episode, but I know how difficult it is to get butts in seats, so I'm excited to learn from you. But before we get there, take us beyond the bio. Who's Ginny? How did you start doing all these cool things?
So a little bit kind of like longer version of my story is I became the official mint passer outer at a Carrie Underwood meet and greet. And during that opportunity, basically, before you met Carrie Underwood, I was to give you a mint. And then the promoter of that show asked me if I would like to learn the business. And I just said, sure, not knowing really what that meant. And fast forward, I learned that you could have a job as promoting concerts. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I need that job. So changed my career the next semester and got heavily involved in live events through my student government and during my college years, and then continued that into grad school, which led to my first job in Austin working at a 8,000 seat venue.
I love that overview. Ginny, I feel like there's a book behind there. You know, how a mint started your entire career. It's such a cool marketing angle. Yes. It's really cool seeing how that one thing, I love the fact that you brought us back there to start your overview, because it led to so many things. I mean, I bragged about some of them just in the intro to the episode. More than 800 shows. Obviously, you've got an incredible client roster with your own business now. So at a really high level, I want to talk about the importance of events, because we've all been to events, but I think a lot of business owners miss that opportunity area as far as why events are such a powerful force. It's funny for me personally, Ginny, I'll add this into the mix, is when I was running a marketing and search engine optimization agency, I realized we could host local events in conjunction with local chambers of commerce, which just brought people together. We taught them about SEO. We never had to worry about how to get clients because we were filling rooms with business owners. So that's my experience with events, but I want you to introduce us to this whole wide world of why events are such a powerful force for marketing, for engagement, for all the things that you've experienced.
Yeah, so kind of tying in your experience, Brian. So when you provide value to someone, they are, you're increasing that like factor for your for your business. And then if it's free on top of that, that's going to make them really like you. So really what events are able to do is really increase that know, like, and trust factor. And it's easy to think, I always joke when that big P word happened back in 2020 that I went from having the coolest job to like not having the coolest job overnight. And I just thought, what does this mean? However, people still want to get together. So be it doing something like we're doing virtually and or getting to be in the same room as people, it's really a valuable way to, again, just enhance that know, like, and trust factor. So that way, when you are asking your audience to come with you on that buyer's journey to maybe you gave them something for free and then like be it a template, ebook, what have you, and then now you're asking them to invest in something, be it a product or service, the more kind of face time that they get with you is just going to make that sell a little bit easier. And then also, again, to your point, when you bring people together, you may not have to worry about the where's my next client coming from, because somebody else has already had experience with you that have, again, you've already planted that seed of that know, like, and trust factor. So when the opportunity arises, they're like, yes, top of mind. When I work with Brian and his company, they make me feel good. So let me have them be a partner to like get me on that journey that I'm trying to do, be it SEO, marketing support, what have you.
Yeah, I love that perspective, Ginny. You said that people love free events. The only thing I found that they love more than that is free events with free food. That was always one thing that I realized. Absolutely. That will put butts in seats. So we're definitely going to talk about some of those kind of tricks and tools and tactics that we can use in that regard. But before we get there, Ginny, it's really cool hearing you talk about the value of these events, but I do think it's something that we all as event attendees probably take for granted, is all the work that goes behind it. Talk to us about the different stages, from saying, hey, I want to host an event, to the actual execution, to the follow-up. I want to hear from your planning phase, because you've obviously been such a big part of so many of these events. What are those steps? What are the actual stages of making a successful event happen?
So the stages for a live event would just be like the planning and prep. And planning and prep is just kind of when you're going to have this event, when tickets are going to go on sale, what marketing assets do you have? And typically I like to do that 90 days in advance of whatever's happening. There are going to be some instances, and I've been a part of some of those shows where it's a tour and it's planned out for years in advance, but ideally kind of that sweet spot is going to be 90 days. And then once you've gone through planning and prep, you go into the announce phase. And the announce is, you're sending your press release, you're putting it on social media, you're putting it on a Facebook event, because what I've found is, though Facebook isn't necessarily pushing events as much, people still are treating your Facebook page like your website. So you want to make sure that what's on your Facebook page is mirroring what's on your website, especially when it comes to hosting in-person events. And then after you've gotten through the announce phase, you hit the maintenance phase. And maintenance is going to be where you want to add in those like promotional things and getting that publicity for the event. And just that's typically where I like to put some kind of free event that hypes the paid event. And so it gets that traction, gets people excited. And then you go into the back-end campaign. So you're doing paid advertising, spending Facebook meta dollars, and lining up potentially pre-event interviews. And then you have that actual event, and that's the like big payoff. Your work kind of comes together. You're able to execute on this like really fun experience, and the hope is that you're again driving in that like increased know, like, and trust factor. So that way, when you get into the last phase of the event's life cycle, on the event afterglow, you're able to really kind of capture how much fun those people had and ask them, like, tell them and ask them what you want them to do next. Do you want them to buy tickets to your next event? Do you want them to become a member of your organization? Do you want them to buy a service or product? So that event afterglow is really critical because it keeps those customers in your ecosystem, and all of that 90 days work that you've already done to build that know, like, and trust factor, that event afterglow is kind of the time where you're able to kind of capture that and continue them as a customer and a fan of your events, of your business, what have you.
Holy cow, Ginny, I knew that you'd absolutely rock that answer, but the fact that you had such clear steps, and obviously it's second nature to you having ran so many of these events and put all the planning in place, it sounds effortless to you, but I obviously know the realities of that. Knowing these steps is one thing, but actually executing, having the marketing to support it is an entirely other thing. Because when I hear you talk about some of these phases, for example, planning and announcing, I'm going to call out the announcing phase actually. Too many people think that if I just announce it, if I put an event into the world, it's kind of like that old adage of if you build it, they will come, that seats will fill themselves. Where do we go wrong? Where do you see events not going to plan and filling up to capacity, or people just resting on their marketing laurels and not understanding all of the work that needs to go into actually promoting an event to fill it up?
So there is an industry adage that for live events, it's like you can't sneak into town and have a sold out show. So that's one thing that I always try to remind promoters, if they try to be a little bit more conservative on the spend, that marketing obviously does work. And thankfully, I feel like I've run into a situation where I get called in typically at the beginning of the planning phase. So that way we're able to execute on a marketing strategy. But then I've also been called in when it's like, okay, seats aren't selling. What do we do? And kind of go for that scramble. So I think, again, it's just the perspective. I think that there's a way to spend advertising dollars in a strategic way where you're not like overspending, but then also part of that just comes from that planning phase. Like if you have the 90 days in advance or the 60 days to execute on awareness and promotions and paid advertising, that's like going to be your sweet spot. You want all three to kind of have that synergy to get those butts in seats. And then without that, you are left to kind of like the scramble of like 2 weeks out, the show isn't selling. What do we do? So one thing I will add is that also knowing about your event, like if this is a free event, fabulous, like it's hard to track some of the attendance that way. However, if it is an event where it is paid, having that like paid component where you're kind of struggling 2 weeks out, where you're trying to get people to have that awareness about your event. You'll want to also know, does this event need to have 200 people at the show or 2,000? And sometimes you just need 200 people to break even. And that is always like my first goal. And then going from there and building on, okay, now let's make money for this show. Now let's sell out this show. But not every single show needs to be a sellout. And so I think that that's also a thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, I want to talk about free versus paid, because even hearing you talk about that, I guess I've probably never taken it that seriously and given it much thought, because I think I could argue both ways. If it seems on the surface level how easy it would be to fill a free event, but on the flip side, I really love that thing that we say in marketing of those who pay attention. I remember when I started launching online courses, I would give these courses for free to all of my friends. None of them did anything with it, whereas the people who were paying for these courses got all the results. But of course, then on the flip side, it's harder, so to speak, to fill a paid event. Where does your mind go when you think about free versus paid events?
So one of the things with free, I feel like that's going to be more of an awareness situation and or kind of feel good community. And so with my current work, I oversee the coordination of our First Fridays ODTX, which happens on the first Friday of the month. And that's very similar to other communities. And so one thing that we kind of had going for us is there is already somewhat of a understanding of what this event is. And then it's challenging to gauge how many people actually show up. And so that kind of goes back to applying for grants and sponsorship and having funders for this event, because everybody wants to know, well, if I sponsor this event, how many eyes are going to see this? And so there's been quite a few different ways that we've kind of come up with how we can track participation. So that would be my suggestion for anything that you do have free, that you track some kind of participation by, I've had the most success doing contesting. And so we've done a passport where every stop you go to, you get a stamp, and then you get entered to win a TV. That was the biggest hit. And so we got over 250. And if you think 250 times 2.5 for the average like group size of family that is attending these events, we were getting a pretty substantial number of attendance. So that has been super successful. And then again, really kind of deciding if you're going to do a free or paid event kind of really goes back to what is the goal. If the goal is to even have an event where it's a low cost ticket, so that way you can just kind of pay for those expenses that come with hosting the event, that sometimes is an easier sell. But then again, you also get, if it's such a low price ticket, that people wait to the day of. So a lot of it is, unfortunately, sometimes it's like you're balancing, like they will come, we've done all the right things, and like, you know, sending the prayers, crossing your fingers to that people will show up. So it's really kind of identifying, again, what is the purpose of the event and what you're trying to accomplish. And then also on that event afterglow, like going back to that event life cycle, on the event afterglow side, what do you want them to do next? So identifying those things can kind of help you choose, are you going to do a paid or free event?
Yeah, I love hearing the way you think about that. Most listeners can't see you and I right now, Ginny, but I can see you, and I love the smile that came across your face when you openly acknowledge the fact that, yes, even when you do the right things up until the very end, you're hoping and you're putting a lot of faith into the fact that people will show up. It's an inevitable part of events. It's scary, but I would imagine it's also super exciting because you've seen it so many times. Yes. I want to go deeper. Ginny, this is something about you that really stood out to me that I've been so excited to hear your thoughts on, and you've actually already mentioned it a few times in our conversation today, and that is the pre-promotional events. That's something I've never taken advantage of, but I love live comedy, for example. I love going to events. I love doing all the things. I just love not being home. So with that in mind, I've seen it work in so many different ways. Ginny, talk to us more about pre-promotional events, because I even see it on the entrepreneurial level. A lot of really astute event marketers implement that for businesses, for personal brands even. What do those events look like? How do you even begin to formulate what those pre-events look like?
So about, I feel like maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the buzzword experiential event marketing happened. And thankfully I was in Austin during that, like the buzz of all of that. And then if you ever have the opportunity to attend South by, like the whole thing is experiential marketing. It's how can we put our brand in front of somebody without saying, watch this commercial. And so that kind of got me thinking, in my most recent role as the director of marketing for Wagner Noel, we had at least 100 shows a year. And a lot of times we're competing against ourselves. So how can I make a show stand out more than another show that may like already be sold out? But that's the one that people have the buzz about. So that just kind of got me thinking, how can I have these pre-promotional events that are free, and that the goal is to raise awareness and hopefully get them engaged enough that they purchase a ticket to the paid event. So some ways that I've been able to do that for family shows, it became kind of turnkey to work with our local library to have a story time that matched the family event that was occurring. So we've done Very Hungry Caterpillar, like Bubble Guppies, Paw Patrol, you name it, Sesame Street. And so the majority of the time that there's already a book associated with those characters. So having a story time that's free at the library to get people in to see oh, there's a live action component that you can take your kid to enjoy. So that always worked out really well, and give away free tickets at that event. Also for family shows, doing a coloring event at the mall is very overwhelming, but I've always seen success with those events. Basically just doing a coloring sheet of the character that matches the show, giving away a pair of tickets. And then for some of the more adult shows, one of the things that I loved that we had Postmodern Jukebox come, and we did a pre-show happy hour speakeasy at a local bar, and we did it about a week before the show, and it really raised awareness about the show, as well as gave people the opportunity to hear the music, because that was the soundtrack. We had a signature cocktail, we had cookies made that were 1920s themed, and had a 1920s photo booth, and people loved it, and almost everybody walked out purchasing a ticket to the actual show that next week. So doing some things like that just helps raise awareness, and people may be on the fence. I always say like 20 to 30% of your buyers are super fans. They're buying tickets. You don't need to convince them. And then the remaining kind of 70 to 80% are those people like yourself, Brian, who you enjoy comedy, but you may not be familiar with this comedian. And so my job is to convince you you're going to have a good time, buy the ticket. So those people that are kind of on the fence, that enjoy live entertainment, but may not be familiar with the actual artist that's performing. And so having those kind of pre-events to introduce that are low risk for the individual, it's like, okay, I don't have to spend the $40 to come to the show to see what it's about. Let me go to this pre-event, pre-show happy hour, and then choose whether or not to spend the $40 to buy the tickets.
Yeah, it's really cool to hear some of this magic behind the scenes, because Ginny, you're making me realize how many great event marketing campaigns I've been a part of since childhood. You're really making me reflect on the fact that I think one of the greatest marketing machines in sports is the Harlem Globetrotters. And the first time I saw them as a kid was they just came to our school. It was an hour that they spent investing in it in front of probably, I don't know, close to 1,000 kids in my school. And, the players were just spinning the basketball on their finger. And all of us kids went home so excited about the Harlem Globetrotters. And of course, our parents, yeah, exactly. They bought the tickets. I think it's such a powerful force that we probably don't even realize. I'm going to put you on the spot here, because I know that a lot of people probably are listening to this thinking, well, Ginny, I throw online events. How does all this stuff? I mean, we're talking about Harlem Globetrotters players spinning a basketball on their fingers. How do we bring this stuff, these experiences, these strategies and techniques that you use, how does this pertain or change or any of those things with regards to hosting online events?
So with online events, I feel like if you will, the secret sauce typically is, if you are a course creator, to have some kind of webinar before your big ticket offer of selling your course. So that's one of the things that people do. I'm actually working on courses for 2025. And so we have some of those already filmed and queued up, in one of our kind of things that we're doing kind of intertwine is a live interview with some of my mentors. And so I just thought that would be a cool way to hear kind of quote how it was done back in the day situations that people may not necessarily get because nowadays in some situations, especially when it comes to artists, you don't necessarily have as much interaction as you once did. And so one of my mentors, for example, when Reba McEntire first went out on tour, she paid her $500, and she still has the check, carbon copy of that transaction. So I wouldn't even imagine paying Reba McEntire $500 right now. It's just crazy to think that 50 years ago, that was something that could have happened. And so again, kind of to that point, what I'm trying to say is kind of finding something that is unique about the event that you are trying to host online, and then bringing people in to a unique experience that you wouldn't be able to get, and be it an interview that they can kind of sit in and watch and participate, or be it something else that's a little bit more you provide value and they're taking away something through a webinar.
Yeah, I love that. Gosh, Ginny, I know that myself and probably a ton of listeners, our minds are going a million miles a minute. You're throwing so many ideas out there all at once. So I love listening to you talk about these things. I want to bring it back to something that I teased about earlier in our conversation. And I want to get your expert opinion on these things, because I teased about free food as kind of a very... It's an easy gimmick. If you roll that out, then it's always going to work with audiences and with bringing people in. What are some of those other techniques? And I'm super interested to hear some of those like guaranteed ones from you, as guaranteed as we can make, with regards to both in person and online. Because I don't know yet how to do free food online. I'm thinking about how cool it would be to send some Uber Eats delivery drivers to attendees' addresses. But with that said, Ginny, what are some of those like low-hanging fruit ways that we can incentivize people to actually show up?
So a couple things come to mind. So again, during 2020, I hosted a happy hour for friends, and where I gave everyone the ingredients to make like a single cocktail. And because it was locally, I went and delivered the like little cocktail package to everyone, and then we all jumped on Zoom and had a virtual happy hour. So if you're in the location as your attendees, that could potentially be something. I've also attended a conference online where if like the first 50 people got a welcome package, and it was like, there were stickers, there's koozies, there was a mug. So that was like kind of the ploy to sign up early. So there's some things like that you can reward people for getting in, being one of the first people to get in on your virtual event. And then for in-person events, I really think, again, how can you have that unique experience that they're not going to get if they walk into your venue and or your community partners establishment? And so sometimes that's as simple as cookies. We've done birthday parties for artists that are coming to the venue, and so that's something that's worked over really well, because most people don't turn down an opportunity to come to a birthday party. And so we'll do, record giveaways, have cupcakes, have, specialized cookies. Specialized cookies are kind of like my sweet spot, because I find that's what people tend to Instagram story the most. And that's also what I'm trying to think of, is like, how can I get these people to think, oh, this is really cool, let me share this on my socials. So then their followers have the FOMO and they're like, okay, well, I don't want to miss out on the next thing. Or I didn't know that so-and-so is coming to perform. Let me make sure I get tickets. So looking for those kind of like Instagram moments and kind of low cost things that would just, again, create an experience that you can typically spend, less than $500 on your marketing budget, and really just, again, it be unique, that you can't just walk into that building and get that same experience.
Wow, Ginny, listeners know about this show that there's no pre-planned questions. So I always love emphasizing the fact that you're rattling all of these things off without any prep from my end as far as what we're getting into, but you're giving us so many incredible ideas. I do want to just put you on the spot really quickly as we're racing to a close here. I feel like you and I could probably talk about events for days and days at a time, but you've mentioned so many fun marketing channels here. Hearing you talk about, how can I create an Instagrammable moment? I think about all those Instagram walls that people love that stuff. They always share those with their people. I'm guilty of it for sure. And I don't even use social media all that much, but it sounds to me like you've mentioned social media today. You've mentioned some paid ads today. You've mentioned PR. What are those big channels that you lean on leading up to these events? And whether you view it as part of the strategy with regards to getting the word out there, or a really tangible, like you talked about Facebook events, creating an event there to actually get those butts and seats.
So, like, sweet spot, obviously, is I always prioritize social media, advertising, as well as like some kind of organic push. And then it depends on the promoter, but my typical like kind of philosophy is, 80% get them to, you're talking about the event without saying buy tickets, and then 20% is going to be that, hey, buy tickets. And so my team and I, for each event, we kind of put together our biggest things are social media and newsletters. And so we put together that strategy, and then we kind of, depending on the budget, intertwine some paid advertising, be it with radio partners or TV partners. And then also having relationships with those radio and TV partners where you can kind of quote ask for more. And so case in point, for First Fridays, I just got a thing where we're going to have a weather mobile out from one of the news stations. So the entire First Friday for the rest of 2025, they're going to report the weather from First Friday live. So that's just one added component that brings people's attention to your event without it being like a solid commercial. Some other things that I always do is also always send out a press release. Like I mentioned, also do the Facebook event, and then find those ways where you can talk about the event without saying buy those tickets. So an example of that is we have a bull riding competition coming up in February. So we did a big push to have people tell us their cowboy name, their like bull rider cowboy name. So, the first letter of your name means one thing, and then the month you're born means something else. And so like mine is like Lone Star Wrangler. And so kind of getting people to just have those fun things that are interactive, raise awareness, but not necessarily, it's not a push to buy tickets as much. It's just, again, you're just kind of cultivating that know, like, and trust.
Yeah, Ginny, gosh, I feel like during the course of our conversation here today on the air, you've pretty much laid out an entire event marketing strategy from the pre-planning phase all the way through to the actual execution. So a few eagle-eyed listeners are going to be able to take so many valuable takeaways from this. And listeners, that's a little bit of a tease for me, because Ginny's actually hosting a webinar coming up very shortly that we're going to talk about in a minute. But before we get there, Ginny, I do want to put you on the spot one final time with a super broad question that I love asking at the end of these sessions. And that is, what's your best piece of advice? Knowing what you know about events marketing, but also the fact that you're one of us, you are a fellow entrepreneur, and knowing that we're being listened to by entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, what's that one piece of entrepreneurial advice that you'd want to leave them with today?
I'd say just kind of find your people. And one of the things that I've heard from the Nicola Matthews-Dacome, who does the Side Hustle Pro podcast, she always talks about her mentors and how sometimes they don't actually know her, because she just like listens to all their content, listens to their interviews, follows them on socials, and kind of uses that to sometimes guide her decisions. So be it somebody that you may not actually know, have them, but you enjoy their progress and their values and their philosophy on being an entrepreneur. And then also finding those people that you can connect with in real time. One of the nice things that somebody suggested to me was find a business coach that is somebody that you want to be in 3 years. And so about 6 months before I started my company, I started meeting with a business coach who has a marketing agency, who was billing at $1 million a year. And I just was like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine that. But he was about 4 years into his journey at the time. And so that was really pivotal as well. Just kind of being able to bounce those ideas and having the permission to ask the questions that you might feel awkward about, like how much money should I have in savings for my business? Is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? And kind of just getting some feedback and being able to have those conversations with people who've done it before.
Yes, Ginny, you have delivered not only event marketing expertise and insights today, but absolutely nailed it on that really valuable entrepreneurial advice and feedback there. So I so appreciate that. I already teased a little bit about the fact that you've got some exciting things in your pipeline. You're launching an online course with a blueprint on event marketing. You've got a webinar coming up. So for listeners who want to check those things out, of course, as well as all the other things that you're doing, drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
If you go to backstageeventmarketing.com, there will be a pop-up to sign up for our webinar that we're going to be hosting in March, and we'll have a code for entrepreneur listeners to save 10% off on that. And so that date is Tuesday, March 11th from us at 6 p.m. Central. And so we'll share that code in the comments below, as well as I'm sure Brian will share it in the show notes with everyone. But again, just go to backstageeventmarketing.com and there'll be a pop-up where you can sign up, and then there'll be a special code for listeners of the podcast to save a little bit on the webinar, and then find out about the course that we're going to be launching in April. So we hope to see you there.
Yes, I love it. Ginny, you make my job easy because you already know the drill. Of course, we are making it as easy as possible for all of you listeners, no matter where it is that you're tuning in to today's episode. We are dropping those links down below in the show notes, as well as the special code. So definitely scroll down to the show notes, because you'll find that special code that Ginny has supplied us. Super easy to remember her website. It's backstageeventmarketing.com. You can click right on through from the show notes. Otherwise, Ginny, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Brian.